Hello everyone, this is Zas. In this video, I'm going to go over how to do Wolf's perfect giant swing in Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown. Wolf's perfect giant swing is done by holding back, then down, then toward with punch and guard. Diagonals do not count. Only the cardinal directions of back, down, and toward are counted. To do the perfect giant swing, the down part has to be completed in 4 frames or less. If the down part is done in 5 or more frames, it is a regular giant swing. Let's go over this again. First, you can spend as long as you like holding back. Then, you hold the down direction. Finally, you hit toward and punch and guard. You can hold this for an unlimited number of frames. I like to think of it as a sandwich. The back part and the towards plus PG part are the 2 pieces of bread. The down part is the inside of the sandwich. The inside of the sandwich must be completed in 4 frames or less. Okay, now that we've gone over the rules, let's go over a couple of examples. First, let's take a look at Wolf doing a normal giant swing. We can tell that this was a regular giant swing and not a perfect giant swing by the fact that the camera angle did not change and Wolf did not exclaim "yeah" during the animation. Let's take a look at the inputs in detail. We started our sandwich with back for 1 frame. In this case, the input happened to be back for a duration of 1 frame. It could have been something else. It doesn't matter. And the input ended with toward and PG for 9 frames. In this case, it happened to be 9 frames. It could have been anything. What do we have in the middle? We have 1 frame of down and 4 frames of toward. So that's a total of 5 frames. Because it was 5 frames or greater, that came out as a regular giant swing and not a perfect giant swing. Okay, now that we've taken a look at a regular giant swing, let's take a look at a perfect giant swing. This time, Wolf did a perfect giant swing instead of a regular giant swing. We can tell because of the camera angle change and the exclamation. Let's take a look at the inputs in detail. In this case, we started our sandwich with back for 1 frame. It doesn't matter how many frames we held it for, but in this case it was 1 frame. And we finished the sandwich with toward and PG for 10 frames. What do we have in between? We have down at 1 frame, toward at 2 frames, so a sum total of 3 frames. That's less than or equal to 4, so we got a perfect giant swing. We've seen Wolf do a perfect giant swing at 3 frames and a regular giant swing at 5 frames. Let's take a look and see what happens at 4 frames. At 4 frames, we got a perfect giant swing. We start with our sandwich here at 1 with G. We end our sandwich here with 12 and toward with PG. And in between we've got 3 frames at down and 1 frame at toward. That's a total of 4 frames. So we've shown that at 4 frames or fewer, you get a perfect giant swing. And at 5 frames or more, you get a regular giant swing. So we've seen Wolf do perfect giant swings at 4 and below. It stands to reason that the absolute fastest input we can do for a perfect giant swing is exactly 1 frame. Here we can see that Wolf began in back for 1 frame, ended in toward for 11 frames with PG, and in the middle had down for exactly 1 frame. That's the absolute fastest that you can do the perfect giant swing. I like to call that the ultimate giant swing. It won't deal any extra damage, but you can give yourself a pat on the back. Now that we've gone over the basic rules, we're going to look at 2 special cases. In our first case, we'll take a look at how a giant swing can end in neutral instead of toward. In this particular example, we started with back for 2 frames in G, but we ended in neutral PG instead of toward in PG. What's going on here? Well, the VF engine gives leeway of several frames in between the last direction pressed and PG. For most directional throws, that leeway is 5 or 6 frames, but for the giant swing in particular, it's actually very generous. To keep it as a perfect giant swing, however, we just have to make sure that a total of no more than 4 frames have passed before we hit PG. In this example, we had 2 frames in down, 2 frames in towards, and then finally PG. We could have also had 1 frame in down, 1 frame in toward, 2 frames in neutral, and then PG, and still gotten a perfect giant swing. In our final example, we'll take advantage of the Virtua Fighter engine properties for input grace periods. In Virtua Fighter, any 2-button combination is allowed a 1-frame delay to account for human error. For example, a kick plus guard can be performed by pressing kick for 1 frame, then kick plus guard. In our case, we'll be looking at pressing guard for 1 frame, then guard plus punch to do a throw. Unlike our previous example, this leeway is extremely strict. You have only 1 frame to do this link. A 2-frame button link will not work. This example will build on the last one that we just saw. In this example, we started with back in G, then down for 1 frame, then towards for 3 frames. We then had guard for 1 frame, and finally P plus G for 9 frames. At first glance, it appears that we are violating the rule of 4. We have 5 frames in between the start of the sandwich and the end. 1 at down, 3 in toward, and 1 in neutral with guard. What's going on here? Here's where the input leeway comes in. Because we had guard held for exactly 1 frame, followed by P plus G, the engine considers this the same as having pressed P plus G on the prior frame. Note that if we'd held G for even 1 frame longer, no throw at all would have come out. Instead, Wolf would have ended up in the guard position. So the engine here considers the P plus G input as having started on the same frame as the frame where we press G. At this point, we've got the same situation as our prior example. Even though we didn't end in the toward direction, we take advantage of the input leeway for pressing a direction and P plus G. As long as our total middle inputs were done in 4 frames or less, we get a perfect giant swing. Note here that this G could have been a P and would have had the same effect. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching.